Hi, I'm Sylvia Fairhurst from the Beadworkers Guild, and I'd like to show you how to make this lovely peony pin designed by Sue Whiteman, one of our members from up in Carlisle. So here we go, hope you enjoy the video. So to make your peony pin, you're going to need your standard beading equipment, so your thread of choice, size 10 beading needle, small sharp pair of scissors. You'll also need a suitable work surface, so a beading mat or a beading board. Size 15 seed beads, approximately 1 gram. 2 colours of size 11 cylinder beads. You'll need 5 grams of your main colour and approximately 1 gram of your contrast colour. 1 14mm rivoli and a hat pin. There are two versions here, one with a sieve and one with the loop or eye on the end, and both work equally well. As you draw your thread from your spool, you can see that it has lots of kinks in it. So to remove those, just get hold of your thread and give it a good stretch and the kinks will disappear. This really helps to prevent knots and tangles as you're beading. So try and remember to do that before you start. To thread your needle, make sure that you have a nice clean cut in your thread, and this applies to any thread that you're using. I'm using a thick thread because I'm going to use some giant beads. So take the thread and just pinch it between your finger and thumb and place the eye of the needle over where you know that thread to be. So I've buried that so I can barely see it, and then just relax your finger and thumb and it magically goes in. If you have trouble with that, turn your needle over, because the channel is usually slightly wider on one side than it is on the other, and that helps to guide your thread through. We're going to start with the rivoli, the centerpiece for your peony pin, and to do that I'm going to add a stopper bead to start with on the tail end of your thread, and all that does is stops your other beads from falling off when you're not looking. I've gone through mine twice. Once is usually enough. I've gone through twice because it's a large hole in a large bead. And then you're going to need to pick up 36 of your colour A cylinder beads. I'm going to use half that amount. Normally I would go through the whole lot again and the first one once more, but this I'm just going to go through once because it saves time for you, the viewer. And then I'm going to put that thread over my finger so I've got control. I'm going to add a bead, miss a bead, and go through the next bead, and that will give you two beads sitting side by side and a single bead on either side of those. So thread over the finger, pick up one, miss one, go through the next one, and you're going to do that all the way around your circle. Pick up one, miss one, pass through one. I'm now come to the end of round one, and the last bead to go in is the same mantra: pick up one, miss one, and go through the next one. The mistake a lot of people make is that they will go through the high bead here, but you need to go through the same bead that you started from. And then, as you can see, you have no beads to add because the gap is already filled, so you step up through the first bead that you added in this round. Now there's no longer any need for your stopper bead, so you can remove that. And then you need to do another round of your colour A, and then we're going to switch. So bear with me a moment. So here we're coming to the end of our next round of colour A, and again we're at the end of the row, so the last one to go in, pick up your bead, miss your bead, go through the next bead. Remember, don't go through the step up until you're ready. And then you can see that you have now two sets of two side by side, high beads and low beads. And now we're going to switch, and we're going to use size 15s for 2 rounds. Here I'm just coming to the last bead of my first round of 15s. So my last bead, pick up one, miss one, pass through the next one, and then step up through the first one added in this round. If you give a little pull on your tension, you can see how it draws in that circle, and it's now starting to curl over because the 15s are so much smaller than the cylinder beads. So round 2, you do need to dig a little bit for your beads on round 2 because they sit quite low between your cylinder beads, so you do have to have a little poke down to get at them, and keep your tension fairly tight on this round to bring that circle in even tighter. You can see I can't actually get that thread over my finger this time, so I'm holding it with my other hand. And you can see how this is really bringing that in. And then when we've got round to this row, there is one more row to add on your 15s. So dig down to the last one, give it a little tweak, and then step up. Now for the final round, this is going to be the front of your rivoli cage. For the final round, you're going to add one bead and pass through the next high bead, and then you're going to decrease. So instead of skipping across the gap, we're going to pass through so there's no thread visible. So we're just going to miss that unit and pass through the next one. And give it again, just keep your tension fairly firm. Sorry, we're going to pass through those to the next high bead because we've just added one. Oh, the bead is objecting. I think it's a bit tight for my needle. There we go. And add one, and then pass through the next two, and add one. Now you can see that this is starting to give you like a little star shape, little pointed ends. On my one, I don't have an even number of beads in the middle. I started with 18, and then as you do your peyote round, oh, I've got one that's stuck, there we go, you're using half the amount of beads. So mine ends up with a 9 bead row, and that leaves me an odd bit on here. But if I show you the actual peyote centre, you can see more the points here, and they're nice and even. So that's your front done, and then you're going to turn it over and you're going to insert your rivoli, obviously upside down. I'm just going to give a little tweak on the tail here, and you're going to then do 2 rounds on the back with your 15s. So if your thread is long enough, you can just weave through to get back to the other side. You may want to use your tail if that's long enough. It doesn't really matter which one, as long as you do your 2 rounds on the back. I decided to use the tail thread to do the back of my rivoli, and as you can see it's getting fairly short, so I need to join a new thread. There's many ways to join new threads, but I quite prefer to do the weaver's knot. So you make a slip knot first of all. So a slip knot is basically one of those that comes undone. So you cross your thread over, and then you bring it behind your loop and through the loop, hanging onto the tail. Put the end of your old thread through the loop on the new thread and bring it down where you want your knot to be formed, and when it's there, get a good grip and pull tight. And you can possibly hear it click, you can certainly feel it click, and if you give it a little tug, you'll know if it's formed or not, because if it hasn't formed properly, it will move. So now I'm ready to start again, and my knot will go inside the next bead. There we go. And I can carry on as normal. So my last bead goes in to the bead on the previous row, and then I step up to the bead I've just added in this row. And as you can see, it's curling around quite snugly on the rivoli, and I just need to do another round and then we can move on to the next stage. Okay, so now we have our 2 rows on the back, and I've just added the last bead. I haven't stepped up on this round because I'm going to actually go back into the previous round into the cylinder beads, give it a good pull, and then I'm going to lock that tension in place by reversing direction on my cylinder beads and just go in a square motion, so I've gone around in a circle kind of thing. And then for the next stage you want to step through to the second round on the back of the rivoli, and here we're going to do what we call stitch in the ditch. So you're going to use your contrast colour, your colour B, and you're going to go from this one to the next one in the same row, which leaves your bead sitting in the ditch between the rows on side by side. So we're going to go around with our contrast colour beads all the way around. Just remove the ends over this side here so that I can see them when I want to weave them in. And there you have it. I have stepped up here, but I'm going to go back down through the next bead again, and again I will do a weaving in stitch. So I'm going to sneak underneath that one and come back through its neighbour on the opposite side, and that's pretty much my thread secure, and I can cut it under tension close to the bead, and your end relaxes inside your bead. So that's your rivoli encased. We're now going to show you how to do the petals. So the petals, you need 3 of your main colour, and leave yourself a decent length of tail so that you can have something to hold on to, and then go back through all 3 again, and the first one once more, so that your tail and your working end are emerging from the same bead. Your next round you add 2 beads and go through the very next bead, and they do need a little persuading to stay in the right place, so you just need to give it a little nudge, and then when you get to the last one you're stepping up as we did before. So with your small beads you might find it easier to put your needle in the gap between the 2 you've added, just to make them sit in the right orientation. And then each round after that it's 2 beads on the corners, so this is known as a herringbone stitch or a herringbone corner, and then you're going to add, you'll be using the same colour, but I'm going to use a contrast bead so you can see what's happening. So you're going to put another bead in the gap there, and then you've got another corner, so 2 beads on in the corner, 1 in the gap, and 2 beads on the corner. Move my tail out of the way, and another one in the gap. Now you're on the last one here, so you need to step up, so you can go through and step up through the high bead, and you continue in this fashion all the way around until you have 5 beads sitting between your corners. So if I just do this row here, you'll see what I mean on the count of these beads. Oops. So as you work your way through, if you don't count the corner beads, you will have 5 beads, high beads like here. You've only got 2, so you carry on until you've got 5. And then on the last row, which we'll be putting in 6 beads on the top, you only have 1 bead on each corner. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when you get to bead row 5, complete row 5, and then just put 1 on the corners, and you've got 6 beads in between. And then you're going to move on to do the curl at the top of the petal. So your last bead going on would have been this one, so you'd be going through here. You need to emerge out of the corner bead, and then you are going to use your contrast bead in this instance, and you're going to work across one side of your petal. So we're going to put these on right across here. I've got quite a long thread here because I know how much it eats. And when you get to the end of the row, you need to make a turn. Now this is the last bead going in, but you've got no bead to go through, so you return in reverse through the one on the end, and that allows that bead to sit in place. Now you need to make a turn, so I use these 3 beads here, and I'm going to do through that one going in the same direction, and then turn again and come back through the one next to it, through the one on the end of your main colour, and then you can turn again back through your new colour, and then you've made a decrease, because as you go through the next row, I'm going to turn it over actually so I can hold on to my thread. You can see now that you have this diagonal on the end, and that is going to decrease row by row until you get to a single bead on the end. But as you get to the end of this row, you have an alternative method for turning, so we'll just persevere for a moment. Now you could go around and do the same kind of turn here, or a much easier one is just hook your needle under the thread at the end there, and then you can turn around and come back through those 2, and then you can carry on until you get down to 1 bead. When you get across the next row, you hook underneath these 2 beads here and turn and come back. So here we are with the last bead going in at the top of the curl. Last one in, so do the turn and come back out, so you're emerging from that last bead. Now this is going to curl and it's going to connect to the main part of your petal, and you're going to connect it to the 3rd bead from the centre. In fact, that's an easy way to count your rows as well, to see how far you are. You need to have 4 of your main colour, and then you know you've got the right number completed. So roll this over and connect it to bead number 3 from the centre, and you're coming out this side of the bead, so you need to go into the same side of the bead on your main part of your triangle there, and then come back through the bead on the curl. Now you can see if I let go, it relaxes a little bit, and you can see the thread there. If I pull it and then let go, it just relaxes again. So if you go through a second time and just give it a little pull, it stays put. So just go through twice and then it's secure and it stays in place. Once you've done that, you can take your thread through to the back of your work and you can just weave it in as we did before. Just make a couple of changes of direction and your thread will be locked in place. So that should do it, I think. And then you can cut your thread, or you could weave it down if you've got enough. But remember, cut it under tension and then the end will relax back inside the bead and you haven't got any unsightly tufty bits showing. You need to make 5 petals altogether, and here I'm going to show you how to join them together. So you need to weave in a new thread and emerge from the first high bead from the point of your petal. Again, I'm going to use contrast beads so that you can see where these are placed easily. You will be using the same colour. So you go through the next high bead on one petal and then you marry that up to your next petal, coming back through the same bead and then through the bead you've just added. and again through the bead on your second petal, and then connect the two at the bottom here as well, and back through that one. So those 5 beads are now all connected to each other. Come through the bottom bead to the side of your point and connect another bead directly to this one. So you're going to go back in at the opposite side of that same bead and square stitch your new bead in place like so. Come back through the new bead and connect to the bead on the opposite petal in the same way. So you now have 2 petals connected. Pass your thread through the point, and you can then do that same action in reverse. You can come up through the next bead on here and connect it to another petal in the same fashion. When you have 5 petals connected, then you're ready for the next stage. So we now have our 5 petals connected. Please make sure when you're joining yours that you have them all facing in the right direction as you connect them together. There is nothing more frustrating than finding out that you've got one petal facing the wrong direction, and it's not so easy to unpick, so do take care. We're ready now for construction, and we're going to show you how to attach the eye pin first, and this connects to the reverse of your collection of petals, and it connects to each of those point beads in the center. I'm going to show you on here first. So you can see here that this loop doesn't quite connect to the stalk, so there's room here for your threads to escape, so do take care as you go through this point. Come out of a point bead, through your bead, and I make a loose connection through each point bead first, and then I go back and make a more secure connection once I've got all of these beads connected to the loop. So here you can see that I've got those 3 points already securely connected to the pin. You can tighten this up. You want to try and keep it centered, so you don't want it to be too tight, but you can adjust it as you go. When you get to the stalk, you need to wrap around the stalk, and that will stop it from moving around too much. So we've now connected the eye pin loosely as we did on the giant beads, and I've just come to the last one. So I've gone right around the stalk of the pin here, and then I'm going to just move it around a little so that I can see the point bead underneath there, and that's connected that stalk between the 2 beads here, and hopefully that's not going to shift very far. And then, as I said, I secure these a little more firmly, and I do that by going through the bead at the point and then back through the loop and through each bead again, so you're really making that good and secure. Through the loop, through the bead, through the loop, and back through the bead again, and do that all the way around. Try not to get caught up in your petals. Through the loop again, through the next bead, through the loop, through the bead, and then wrap around the stalk, so I go underneath the stalk to come back to the bead at the beginning. Now that little gap that we talked about earlier where the loop connects to the stalk is pretty relevant now, because that piece is well secured and it's not going anywhere. It doesn't move very much, and your petals are all connected. So you can weave your end thread finish it off, or you can weave it through to the front, ready for connecting your rivoli, which is the next stage. So before we go on to the next stage, I want to show you how the sieve pin fits onto the back of your rivoli. Weave a thread in and emerge from one of the beads underneath your contrast bead, and then just simply take your needle through the sieve, making sure that you've got it the right way around, of course, and then come through the next hole in the sieve, and wherever that sits, pass through the bead that is closest to that hole in the sieve. Now it may not be the next bead in your round, but you want again to keep this as centered as possible. This is now connected to a rivoli, and you can see how neat and secure that is when it's connected. I've brought my thread to the back of the sieve, and I'm just going to take my needle under some of those threads and just do a little half hitch knot, possibly two, just to finish that off, and my thread will then be secure. And I don't want to use a white thread to connect the next stage because it's black on black beads. You're now ready to construct your piece into a final brooch pin. You need to attach your rivoli to the centre of your petals, and the petals need to lift and connect to the rivoli. So to do this, you need to have a thread either on your petals or on your rivoli. Centre your rivoli onto your petals. I have my thread coming out of one of the corner sections so that it's centered on the petal, and I'm going to go through a bead on the outside edge of the rivoli. Now you'll notice this is one of the contrast beads. So I'm coming out of this bead, I'm going to go back up the next bead so that that connection is even on both sides of that bead, and then I would just weave my way up and down through the beads till I get to another connection and attach like so all the way around. You need to try and keep your rivoli centered. It is difficult, I'm not going to lie, but when you've finished it, it does look beautiful. Here's a finished one, and you can see how lovely those petals just sit up around the sides of your rivoli. And there you have, that is your completed rivoli. With the other sieve arrangement, slightly different, because you need to poke the stick through the hole and then you can connect at the sides. Now here you can see that I've got threads going backwards and forwards, and I'll tighten those off and finish that later. So that's your reverse colourway from your black and silver. You've got some black and gold there, and a few other colours here just to whet your appetite. A whole raft of peony pins. So I hope you've enjoyed watching the video and found it useful, and I hope to see you wearing a peony pin. Good luck. Thanks for watching. Bye. So there you are, a peony pin. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and good luck in the competition. Thanks for watching. Bye.